Good Tuesday morning, everybody. My name is Eric Buhrendorf. I'm with my co-host, Brian Williams. You're watching Finance and Technology Insights, where we talk about anything we want, basically. How's it going, Brian?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. For the viewers and listeners out there, we do curate news articles on flipboard.com. You can find the link in the description to our magazine where we curate content, and we do have a Facebook group that we're contributing to, and I've even started posting a little bit there. I don't know if you noticed that this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're gearing up for that.
No, that's good. It'd be interesting to see both of those kind of grow out a little bit, and as our audience grows, we'll get some people to post in our group too. So, yeah, it's fun to see those groups grow. And
yeah, I figured I've been historically on the Flipboard side of the house. You've been on the Facebook group, so I'm just trying to bridge the gap there. This is Finance and Technology Insights. I'm Eric Buhrendorf, CEO of EVERNET Consulting. We're an IT firm that support businesses across the country. Brian, where are you from? What do you do?
Northshire Consulting, and we are an independent advisory firm working with small businesses and families to get their finances and investments in order.
What's going on this week in business, or last week since we last connected? Anything new?
Well, last week we talked about the anticipation of, I guess, the myct savings rollout, which is a state-sponsored IRA program, which follows the path of Cal Savers in Connecticut and Oregon Saves and some other states. So they had a email sequencing issue, which we could talk a little bit more about. But
I saw that.
We've all kind of been there with some automation, and things kind of went a little bit haywire for them. But so they kind of did a softer launch maybe than I think they had anticipated because of that. And they're saying now April 1st. But yeah, so we're following that. We're starting to get some questions on it, but that's been interesting. It's been 6 years in the making, and they've done.
Can you give us more detail on it? Tell us specifically what it is.
So basically, the genesis of it was these states looked at all of the people who wanted to save through the workplace and didn't have access to anything. So it's usually about 40% of the workforce. So in Connecticut, we've got 1.5 million people working, and about 600,000 of them don't have access to save through work through a 401k plan or something similar.
Wow.
So 6 years ago, the state, what's that?
More than half. Wow.
Yeah, it's a big number. So usually these states, when they passed this legislation, the idea was to create a state program along with a mandate. So they started about 6 years ago. From my perspective, what's a little bit different was at the time, the industry was a lot different, like so many other industries. And there's been so many technological changes. There's been things at the federal level as far as tax credits. So it's almost like they've created a solution for a problem that really doesn't exist. But there's two parts really to the mandate. Is one, you have to have something. And then the second part is the state having their own program. They probably
when you say sorry to interrupt, but when you say you, do you mean you, the employee, or you, the employer, have to have something?
The employer. So the employer has to have some type of program. So
this isn't like Obamacare, where technically the individual is penalized for not having care.
Correct. It's through the workplace. So anybody with 5 or more employees in Connecticut, and there's a timeline. So they're starting off June 30th with, if you have 100 or more employees, you have to have a program in place. And then they go down to 20. They go down to, I think it's 75 from there, and then they go all the way down to 25. So there's 3 different waves of it. So we'll see if they stick to the schedule. Some of the other states have altered their schedule a little bit. And as of right now, it's a bit of an empty mandate because there's no penalty behind it. So they haven't decided on that yet. So they can say, yes, you have to have something, but what
they don't have the men in black out there enforcing it.
Right. Yeah. So that was interesting. What's going on with your business, your world, Eric?
So we're building out our marketing team, sales and marketing team. So this morning I was flipping through resumes for the first time in a while.
Wow.
Our team has been pretty solid for the past, I don't know, year or more. And, we're still a small business. So, it's not like we have a robust HR department churning people in and out of the system. So, I find it fun and interesting we use a HR platform, which I would recommend everybody use an HR platform as soon as they start hiring. We do use a payroll company, one of the bigger outfits. I'm sure everybody can guess who, for payroll, and they do have a HR platform, but we don't really like it. So we use a company called bamboohr.com, and it's a really cool tool to track all of your employees. You can track benefits and paid time off and things like that. We actually track our paid time off in our business management software, which is on the operations side of the house. But what Bamboo does for us is allows us, you could track um, your job descriptions and curate those there. So when because after a while, the types of people you need in your organization become finite. And so you can kind of curate these repeating roles that you have to fill. And then what's really nice is Bamboo partners with Indeed and I think a couple other job boards. And once you build your job description, you could just with one press of a button, you could turn the listing on and it starts syndicating it across. And it seems to be included with our subscription, so there's no supplemental fee there. And what's really nice is the submissions come back into Bamboo, and you could see resumes and there's an entire employee or applicant profile that really allows you to kind of triage and review resumes. And then there's a whole scoring system and note-taking system and collaboration system. So if you have an internal HR team, you can collaborate with your colleagues on applicants, and then you can of course communicate to them. And then you can and then the whole platform kind of takes you through the entire workflow from advertising a job, reviewing applicants, making an offer. And then even there's a whole onboarding and training module that you can really curate and take control of training new employees, down to quizzes and video assets and video content. So really is a really cool platform. So I'm excited to tell you guys about the platform, but from a business side, we're also expanding our sales and marketing team. We already have a few members on the team, but managing websites and landing pages and digital ads and SEO and social media and all that stuff is pretty labor intensive. So you really do need to, once you start growing that piece of your business out, you really do need the bodies and talent to get all those spokes of the wheel going. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'll be spending most of my week doing. The other thing we did, and I won't occupy the mic for too much, but the other thing we did was we've been providing and recommending recurring security awareness training to our clients for, better part of a decade. But the nature of that service was a labor consultative type business service. So we would send a quarterly notice saying, "Hey, do you want some cybersecurity training?" Just to, more initially it was we were presenting it to the client as a prudent thing to do when they can do it. But really, we've come to believe that recurring cybersecurity training for a company's employees uniformly across the board is probably as important, if not more important, than having antivirus on your computer. The human weakness that is introduced to a business and its IT and data set is cannot be understated. So I spent a few months and I've been seeing these platforms kind of come up, and training platforms are nothing new, but there really are these new training platforms that really do look at cybersecurity and recurring training for an entire organization uniformly, kind of as an antivirus type experience where you provide the training uniformly. you measure engagement, you measure performance and of assessment. How, basically, are they taking the training? And there's small, like 4-question assessments done, and then how are they performing on the assessments? And there's themes and topics, and you can actually see, this person's strong in web usage and social media usage, but boy, they don't know anything about password management. And you can actually start seeing that in tabular form and graph form and reporting form. So it's we went to the drawing board, I guess you could say, looked at all the products, tested all the products, and picked one, and now we're going to market with it, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, that's good, because I know you've been working on that for a while, so that's pretty exciting. Is that coming from a place where you knew this was something you needed to do, or you were starting to get more questions on it, more demand for it? Yeah,
both. Yeah, demand drives the imperative, drives the innovation. Unfortunately, we're a small business servicing small businesses, so we know what the best practices are, kind of from end to end, how to run and protect a business and its IT function and its data and that sort of thing. But it's time and money, and it's risk exposure, and very few of our clients kind of uniformly adopt and adapt to all of the technologies and processes that we recommend, across the board. So it's constantly kind of a push the ball uphill, with our clients being, their wherewithal to engage with us and implement these technologies and processes. So we've known for years that training and knowledge gaps with the employees were a huge problem. We've known that since day one. So, we implemented, like I said, this suggestive, hey, do you want cybersecurity training this quarter? And we've been automating that recommendation for years. But I mean, we don't dictate anything to our clients. I mean, I don't know how your relationships are with your clients, but we can't dictate to them what they do and what they choose to implement and how they run their business. It's sad in a lot of cases, because we see a lot of businesses get harmed just through bad management choices. We see that every time you see a hospital or school get taken down by ransomware, that was bad leadership from the top. That was just somebody not understanding or valuing their risk exposure. So yeah, we saw the need for recurrent, uniform security training. These platforms, the nice thing about the platforms is you can you implement them uniformly across the organization. So that's because what we used to do is we'd send a notice, hey, do you want training this quarter? They would respond, and then they would gather around I remember I used to provide this in a conference room, and whoever could make it made it. And we weren't measuring and taking attendance, and how everybody was doing with it. So the executives or the bosses or the management would almost always miss them. So a training platform really lets you measure who's participating and how they're doing, and that's really the power of a training platform.
And I imagine some firms now put this as part of their onboarding, right? Before you even sit behind a computer, you're going to have to go through this training.
That would be prudent. That would be the prudent way to onboard employees, for sure. If we built, like I said, if we had total control over how our clients ran their business, yeah, we would have them using an HR platform like Bamboo that would have their whole employee onboarding process codified with before they even got a password or a key to a computer or what have you. They would have to take what's called the baseline training.
Sure.
And yeah, that's how you would want to do it. And we're dog fooding all this stuff too. So, we use the platform, the HR platform internally. We do have our onboarding process codified. We're now implementing this own training tool internally for us. And that's exactly what we will do. We will require the training, the baseline training to be done by the employee even before they get access to one of our systems.
All right. Well, that's good. I'm glad you finally have that up and running. And how many of your clients have gone through this training so far?
So we just went to market with it, I think Thursday last week.
Okay.
So, and we haven't yet sent a full campaign out to our client base. So right now, the only people, the second piece of your question was, are we implementing the tool because of a need or a higher response? I think, and that was the other necessity is we saw a significant uptick in responses to our legacy training service
Okay.
after January of this year. So that was really the kick in the pants. I said, "Oh wow, we need to get them a better product soon," and so that's why I focused all of basically all of February to really look at these products. So we haven't yet sent a uniform campaign out. I'm getting my marketing team together. I already instigated them yesterday to do that. But like as you can see, kind of how all the wheels are connecting here on my
Sure.
side. I need more bodies in the marketing team to move quicker. We're not moving as quick as I'd like to. So
Never does, right? Never
it
moves as
never
fast as you
does.
want, right?
No.
Yeah, you get the ideas spinning in your head, and you wanna just do a data dump out of your brain, but
Oh, are
we're
you
not quite
kidding? I
there yet.
mean, it's already April 1st on Friday.
Yeah,
The
isn't that
4
crazy?
months of 2022 already in the can. So it's funny. I look at business administration just in quarters now, almost in years. Sometimes I look and like, oh, well, we'll meet that initiative hopefully by the end of this year or by the end of next year. And
Mhm.
it's not as a result of poor effort or weak effort. It's just time just evaporates.
It does, yep, everything seems to take a little bit longer than you think it's gonna take, but it just makes those projects that do get done quicker than expected all that more enjoyable, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I asked you about this before we started recording. What you got a little head cold or are you just a
I
little
do, yeah. Yeah, I'm a
seasonal
little
affliction?
stuffy. Yeah, a little season change here, but luckily, I'm the only one in my house with it, so that's not so bad, but,
Excellent.
yeah.
How's your have you been doing any co-marketing or recording on your channel or any channels you want to tell us about or
Yeah,
any
we did,
social media?
yeah, we had a gentleman on from Granite Shares, and they are, that was timely because that's an ETF company. They only run 5 ETFs, but they're very focused on the oil markets and the commodities market. So all that has been timely. So we talked about trading. I'm always interested in the backstory. So I was curious about how he got there, why he started that firm, because he's CEO and founder, and why the ETF structure works and all that sort of nerdy stuff. So we like to that's usually the format of those is the backstory, how they got into it, what they're doing right now, and then we sort of back it out and we say, okay, for the person who's 25 years old, putting away $25 a week, who's completely has no idea what's going on, what's one bit of information that could help that individual. And then as it sort of progresses, we get a little bit more in the weeds, but I never want to start those at a very high level and exclude people right off the start. That's not what
Right.
we're trying to do. So, and then next week, next Thursday, I believe it is, I'm having a vice president of the U.S. Chamber come on. She's a vice president of retirement policy there,
Wow.
and I've spoken to her in the past before, and we have kind of a decent relationship, talking relationship about different sort of big picture retirement plan type of stuff as she works with different types of organizations, and so do I. And she also, even though it's a U.S. chamber, they also do a lot of work with local chambers as well. So they did something that was a little bit interesting. Um, they filed, I believe it's called a briefing to basically say there's too many of these 401k lawsuits out there, and it's really affecting big businesses. And it's at this point they're somewhat nuisance lawsuits and things like that. So that's been interesting to follow because the rate of those over the last 3 or 4 years has been phenomenal. It's like every big plan just has a target on them, and you know how this stuff works. It's a big organization, and they know how much it's going to cost to fight it, so they end up writing a check and settling. And at some point, it gets out of control, where maybe some of the early ones had a little bit more merit than some of the more recent ones. I'm always interested in those, even though I don't work with those mega sized plans. The same principles hold true, even if you just have 5 employees. So we try to look at those big picture issues, and it's like, all right, well, look, here's this mega billion-dollar corporation being sued for this issue, and Mr. and Mrs. Jane Smith, you run a deli, and your plan is better than theirs. That you drew a line through that issue. We don't even, so it's kind of fun to look at those plans and say, God, how does this happen at that level? How do they get sued for this? There's not somebody on the board who raised their hand and said, we should know better. We shouldn't be dealing with this, but it happens. So,
That
so she's
happens.
going to be on, and we're going to cover that. So
That
a
happens a
lot of nerdy
lot.
stuff going on here.
No, that's good. I mean, as far as the failure and due diligence by mega corporations, I mean, that happens all the time. Have you ever heard of the electric car startup Nikola?
No, I don't think so.
Nikola, just another startup like Rivian, and I wouldn't even want to compare them to Tesla, but yeah, just a car startup, and the founder, Trevor, I can't think of his name, but basically, swindled GM into a partnership, and I think we reported on it earlier in the year, maybe, but yeah, I mean, due diligence slips through mega corporations all the time, and um, it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon.
Nope, not uncommon. And it's amazing how many financial services firms have been sued for their own 401k plans. Doesn't necessarily mean there was wrongdoing, but just the fact that they've been targeted, or some of them have been legitimate, some of them haven't been. But it's fascinating to watch those.
Yeah.
At least for me, it is.
No, it is. It's fascinating for sure. I was just thinking if I could segue us into the news.
Yeah,
What's
let's
going
do
on?
it.
What's going on in the news today? These
Well,
days.
news stuff. Well, you wanted to talk about the WhatsApp, right? So we wanted to get into that. I know you posted some stuff in the Facebook group and Flipboard, so we can get at that.
Yeah, let me see here. I was just looking at today's headlines. VPNs are digital snake oil. Expert claims here's why. I've been saying that for years. So I've teetered on. This is completely different than what you just mentioned, but I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to go through this while we pass through the headlines. But VPNs are VPNs are a corporate tool that have somehow been co-opted by private enterprise. And I'm sure if you've spent any amount of time watching video online or any sort, I don't know, have VPN? I don't watch cable television really, but I don't know if VPN commercials are making their way to mainstream. I think maybe there was one during a Super Bowl ad or something, but big money in VPN services being sold to normal kind of consumers these days, and they're being billed kind of on two fronts: one, the security piece, and two, the bypass Netflix's regional lockdown. So if you're traveling abroad or something and you want to still catch your shows, you can use a VPN service to basically, if you're watching Netflix at home and you're in Hartford, Connecticut, they read your IP address, and your IP address is registered with your telco, and your telco registers the geography location of the IP address you're using. And so Netflix knows generally you're watching Netflix in Hartford, Connecticut. But when you use a VPN service, you can a public VPN service that where this article is being discussed. Part of their service is having remote servers kind of geographically spread out the world. So when you before you connect to Netflix on your laptop, you would connect to your VPN service. Then your laptop represents that it's in a geographic location that you are not. And then you fire up Netflix. Netflix goes, "Oh, you're in Hartford, Connecticut," when you're in fact sitting in Cancun, and Netflix is none the wiser. So that's one of the reasons, and I would say, I guess, maybe a benefit if you're looking to, counteract that kind of feature. But the other feature that VPNs are being billed as a security feature. So like they're basically saying before you connect to a public Wi-Fi hotspot, connect to your VPN service. And what a VPN service does is, if you can imagine, a pipe is your internet connection. A VPN is a pipe within a pipe. So you can leave your laptop through the pipe within the pipe, which is your VPN service. And so everybody who's outside of your VPN pipe can't see inside. So that, so that's the security mechanism for corporations, even small businesses, because we've had plenty of clients back in the day before remote desktop stuff and cloud software was around. We were supporting and implementing VPN connections for home workers, and that was a very relevant and necessary security feature. But we were the VPN managers, and we were the terminus from which the VPN connection was starting and ending. So it was a kind of a closed ecosystem, if you will, of trust,
Yeah.
But when you use a VPN service from a public service or some internet-born VPN provider, they can actually see inside your traffic. They can, you're protected by your ISP and maybe Netflix or whatever, but you're not protected from the VPN service provider. So if you're using a VPN service for security, unless you're a corporation or you're managing your own VPN server, it really doesn't check the security box.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know the location thing, that's also become an issue with sports and the TV blackouts and things like that. So sometimes the Mets or Yankees or Red Sox, here in Connecticut get blacked out. And so people try to go through a VPN server to watch a certain sporting event or whatever. So you see it pop up in those circles too.
Yep, that is another benefit
Yeah.
of a VPN service it's just misrepresenting your location.
Yeah.
So that
Most
was
of those policies, we could probably do a whole show on those blackout policies. The idea that, because the blackout policy is in place, that you're going to drive down to Citi Field to watch the Mets.
Oh God, don't get me
It's such
started.
an outdated.
I think I've ranted about this before. I mean, we watch hockey. We like hockey, but we like going in person. We don't really watch it on TV. But we're I don't want to say we're a big football family, but we like football. And I could not imagine the NFL makes it so difficult for its customers to access its product, and I just couldn't imagine making a product and then making it difficult. I'm trying to get my product to as many people as I can. Just the notion of making a product and then making your product intentionally difficult to consume has always just flabbergasted me. And I mean, it's just, you can't even, there's just no venue to just watch all of the games for the team you like. And it's just a nightmare.
It is a pain. Yeah, it is a pain, especially if you watch a team that's out of your geographic area, and now they've got to deal with, Amazon and Apple and all that kind of stuff. So in theory, if you wanted to watch all your games, you'd have to subscribe to like 5 or 6 different networks or platforms, which is crazy.
And we did. I was
Yeah,
paying
see, so they got you, right? So that's
$65 a month through the football season for YouTube TV, which I guess is a cloud-based cable TV or whatever. So it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
The article that I was talking that I posted in our Facebook channel, or Facebook group rather, was this. And it looks like I posted it as the news was developing. So 4 days ago, I posted from TechCrunch this headline here, and from TechCrunch: Europe says yes to messaging interoperability as it agrees on major new regimen for big tech. And then yesterday, The Verge reported on it again. Security experts say new EU rules will damage WhatsApp encryption. So, do you catch the gist of what's going on here? Or you want me to
I
break it
do. I
down?
kind of get it. You could explain it better than I can. So tell me
basically, have you heard in the EU, for example, that I think somehow still Apple gets away with it, but basically, do you remember when cell phones first came out? Every single cell phone had its own charger.
Oh yeah.
So the EU got really annoyed with that. They said it's ridiculous that all of these chargers, and they were really worried about. Well, they were trying to protect the consumer because it's just made life difficult. But but they were also claiming that the e-waste, they call it, basically the garbage that's produced from your electronics, because if you every time you get a new cell phone, you're throwing away a charger. So the EU pushed for the adoption of a charging standard. So that's why I think in most of the world, micro USB has taken over as a charging port for cell phones. And I don't really know what the rule is where they can move to a next level standard. And I don't know how Apple still gets away with their proprietary Lightning connector. But basically, the Europeans they're not afraid to they're not afraid to interfere with a free and open market and force the hand of manufacturers to implement and adopt a standard. Um, so they did it with cell phone chargers, as I just described. They are kind of in the midst of doing it right now with electric vehicle chargers. So there's three large competing standards for EV charging, and I think it's CHAdeMO, which is predominantly in use in Japan, but it was on the Nissan Leaf, which in large part was one of the first electric vehicles that come to market back in 2010. Then there's Tesla's proprietary standard, a la Apple, if you will. And then there's a new kind of quasi micro USB kind of effort called CCS, which is the more kind of broad standard charging cable. But the EU basically told Tesla, like, nope, you gotta ditch your proprietary standard and use the CCS standard. So Tesla and Tesla just opened their new super factory, gigafactory, they call it, in Berlin. And it is speculated and expected that all of the cars rolling off that line will be for the European market, and they will get the non-Tesla proprietary charging standard called CCS. So anyways, Europeans are not afraid to tell free businesses what to do when it comes to standards for interoperability. Okay, so that's a lot of background. This article here, these two articles are talking about message interoperability across all of the messaging platforms. So I haven't read the legislation or proposed legislation, so I've only been reading headlines, but it's pretty clear that what they're gearing up for, if they haven't already, is to tell the likes of Facebook with their messenger. Facebook also owns WhatsApp. I mean, just on those two platforms alone, there's billions of users. Instagram, I guess, has their own messaging. What else? Apple iMessage.
Sure.
A couple others are escaping me. Even Teams, you can imagine Teams.
Yeah. Snap.
So,
You got Snapchat and
right.
yeah.
So the essence is the Europeans are going to tell these big platforms, you guys got to work together to pass messages around. And specifically what the concern is from The Verge, what The Verge is reporting is that kind of interoperability will break encryption. It will negatively impact encryption and user security. And I wonder if I could draw a comparison. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So in Teams, you and I communicate on Teams, right?
Yeah.
So that message, when we message each other, that's end to end encrypted. So if the funny thing is, you don't need a VPN when you use software that's end to end encrypted, because even though our transmission is going over a public connection, the transmission is encrypted anyways. So if you're using good enough encryption, doesn't matter if they gobble up our encrypted transmission, it's scrambled. If we can use Teams to call each other through voice and video, right? We've done that plenty of times, right?
Sure.
That is digital data, also encrypted, just as it's ones and zeros and text and whatnot. You can use Teams as your telephony provider, your telephone service, and we have clients who do use Teams as their corporate phones. You can actually get a standard desk phone that plugs into your network, and you use it as a standard telephone, but that is digitally provided.
Mhm.
So if you use the gateway function of Teams to let callers call into you using a non-Teams telephone-based phone service, or like if you go to your grandparents' house or your parents' house and pick up their phone, and call into a Teams conference call, they're joining you not using the Teams protocol. So now there's a qualifier that everybody is notified. I think even Teams even says a non-Teams participant has joined, and therefore the encryption has been reduced to the weakest participant.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the risk that what the Verge is reporting on when you force interoperability, or if you don't. I mean, just if you enable interoperability across competing platforms or
Mhm.
non-standards driven platforms. I mean, there are encryption models out there that are standard based. In fact, I think WhatsApp even is. I forgot what the encryption standard is. This is way nerdy, so hopefully.
No, this is interesting. So, so what's driving this? Is this consumers that are asking for this, or is this regulatory bodies in anticipation of a bigger issue?
Yes.
Okay.
so
Okay.
so you can imagine um, sometimes the legislature gets a thematic or it gets a hold of a theme
Sure.
and just kind of runs away with it. Sure, like out of 100 million Europeans or a couple or 1 point something billion Europeans, like yeah, you can find a few million that are like messaging platforms should interoperate, right?
Right.
And then you've got 90% of people are like, I'll just open the app where my friend is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you've got politicians, which are basically, um, I always like to use the joke that politicians are like NASCAR cars,
Yeah.
and they're sponsored, and so they take up issues that are advertisable. And when you campaign on consumer protection and environmental protection, nobody's going to say, like, if you say, hey, should you be able to iMessage people on an Android, right? All the hundreds of millions of people on Android would be like, yeah, that would be convenient. I mean, I have a Mac right next to me that sometimes when I'm working, I like to, if I'm getting a lot of text messages from various people, sometimes I fire up the Mac just so I can stay at the keyboard because I'm faster on a keyboard.
Right.
But I work predominantly out of my 6 screen Windows PC here, and it would be nice if I had a iMessage soft software app on my Windows PC. But you know, Apple's strategy is to force you to to a Mac. So, anyways, the impetus for this is, in my opinion, politicians saying, do it for the people, do it for the
Yeah.
environment,
Right.
do it for the children, remember.
Sure. Yeah, for the kids. Well, there's no real environmental impact to this one, right?
No, this is not
Yeah.
environmental. So they would this would be a consumer protection and effort,
Right.
a
And of
signal. This is
course, by
this is what I was looking
by
for.
relaxing the encryption standards, they're decreasing consumer protection, right? But that's a little bit more of an advanced thought, I guess, right?
Well, that's what's so comedic about politicians is that
Yeah.
they campaign on consumer protection, but the laws that they enact very frequently do the opposite of what they intended to do. But
Right.
I think I mean, I was a politician for one term for 2 years on city council, and I don't think I was instantly made evil. And a lot of the things that come across a a political body's an agenda, they sound helpful, and you're like, ah, yeah, you should do that. But somewhere in our societies, our democratically led societies, we don't teach kind of free market principles and moral hazards. We don't teach how, like, yes, everybody wants to feed the poor and house the homeless and save all the children. Like, pretty much everybody wants that,
Right.
but you can't. Well, you can, and a lot of societies do, but when you trample on, I don't know. I don't want to make it too political, but um, but there's the unintended consequences of forced policy.
Right.
I find this issue of app interoperability very fascinating because I'm the child of the 80s and 90s, and I came up during AOL. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know if you had AOL, but AOL Instant Messenger wasn't. I would argue one of the first really pervasive social media networks.
Sure.
A- and then MSN Messenger came out, and then Yahoo Messenger came out, and I think there was
Yeah.
another one called ICQ. So messaging platforms have been around since the 80s and 90s, and at times they've danced around interoperability, but ultimately, because of corporate initiatives and strategies, they just didn't ultimately coalesce into a unified standard. So you just open the app where your friend is. I mean, you know what I mean? And then
Sure. Yeah, and it's not just messaging platforms, it's different file types. I mean, early days of word processing documents or
another good
spreadsheets. I mean,
example.
yeah, it was a big deal when you could finally open Lotus spreadsheets in Excel and things like that, like Word Perfect to Word, all that sort of stuff. But eventually that I don't know if that was the government intervention or just the markets doing it. I guess it was the markets. But yeah, I mean, consumers want that. They don't want to be trapped in a particular ecosystem or be forced to stick with a non-performing piece of software because all of their files or all their friends are there, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
I agree, and I'm one of those consumers that doesn't want to be trapped in an ecosystem. However, I subscribe deeply personally to free market principles, and I would not seek to force Apple to manufacture a Windows developed iMessage software.
right, right, yeah,
I'll vote with my dollars. I'll vote with my disdain. I'll angry tweet them and angry post about them, and hopefully that will move them. But I would not I would not pass, because another, well, again, making it political, but laws move too slowly.
sure,
You know what I mean? So if you enact a legislation forcing interoperability, they're already thinking about the next. You risk, and it does often stifle innovation. So I'd rather the march of innovation to keep going.
right. And one of the big drivers through this stuff historically, Ben, has not been the big companies. It's been the third party app that serves as the go between, and then it's the big company says, "Oh, there is a need for that, so we're either going to create our own go between and draw a line through the
Yeah,
upstart
well,
road, or we'll buy them."
Firefox and Chrome, perfect examples of that,
Yeah,
right? So the United States government and the European government had the famous antitrust lawsuit against Bill Gates' Microsoft in the 90s, because there was the Netscape Navigator, which was like arguably the first successful web browser that came out, but it was an independent piece of software that you had to procure outside of your new IBM PC or whatever. It didn't come because Microsoft didn't bundle a web browser. And then they said they saw the internet coming, and then they bundled Internet Explorer, and it effectively, it didn't shut them down, but it just impacted significantly the revenues of Netscape and their Netscape Navigator. So they spent all of the 90s suing Microsoft just for Netscape to release, I think, their code to the Mozilla Foundation, and they built. Microsoft stopped innovating because
yeah,
they effectively had monopoly power. So by the time, I think they had a ruling in 2004 where Microsoft had to bundle competing web browsers and Windows, the everybody moved on. Because Microsoft stopped innovating, and browser startups kept coming up. Firefox came up and basically brought us tabbed browsing. We
yeah.
have tabbed web browsing because Microsoft stopped innovating. you know
Right, exactly.
um
Yeah, it became too easy to just go out and download Firefox or Opera or whatever you wanted to use at the time.
Yeah. So, how are we on time? We got one more. That I find this article really interesting. I can talk on, or this article we can talk on. Do you have anything else you want to talk on?
No, I think let's talk about the hack one. That's kind of been a reoccurring theme.
This hack here.
Yeah.
So this article here, this is 5 days ago. So I guess it's a little late. Am I going to open it up? There we go. So this article from Forbes, a company called Okta, 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 was potentially hacked in a security vulnerability. And I'm not going to get into the details of the hack, but let's just say that this company and I think several other companies were compromised. And I won't get into the detail or level of compromise because, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter for the sake of this conversation. But Okta is an interesting company because it provides what's called single sign-on authentication. You can actually go to, like, if you're in a corporate, if you're in a corporation and you log into your company provided computer with your work email address and password, or some work username and password, your username and password is being authenticated by a server in your company. And then you log into your Windows-based PC, and then you open Outlook, and all of a sudden your mail just is there. And then you open your files on the in My Computer or OneDrive or whatever, and they just start accessing. All of those applications and functions are actually being authenticated for your access and privileges to those resources.
Okay.
But the authentication is being provided by a corporate managed authentication server, where your username and password is centrally administered, and then IT is providing you rights to files, email, and the corporate network at large. So we're all a lot of our services and products and tools are now web driven and cloud driven. So you have let me think, Dropbox, QuickBooks Online. I don't know, give me another example of a commonly used. If you use a CRM software, like Salesforce is the most common one. So you're on your computer, you've logged in with your local username, password, or corporate password, whatever. But now you're starting to open up web browsers of services provided by countless vendors in the cloud. IT, and we do this for our clients, IT can go to that particular vendor that you're using, like Dropbox, for example, and we can log into your corporate Dropbox account, and we basically create a relationship between the corporate authentication service and Dropbox. And we just say, use their corporate credential to authenticate to Dropbox. So when you open Dropbox.com and you click log in, it will either ask for your work email and password, so you have just one credential to store, or it'll even it'll just know based on your computer's authentication and some various other data points. So that's called single sign-on, is the notion that corporate can go to all of these services that are cloud-born and subordinate the authentication to corporate managed authentication. So Okta is a cloud-born corporate authentication service, and the Microsoft equivalent of that, if you've ever heard of it, is Azure. Microsoft Azure.
Yep. Yeah.
Azure, Azure, Azure. So this is an up and coming service called Okta. It's very popular. Anyways, they've been attacked. So the implication of having a single sign-on, single point of failure. A lot of words to say all that.
Yeah.
So, back in the day, we used to, password managers are not new. They've been around for a long time. Your web browser, you log into a website, your web browser says, you want to save this username and password? I remember Internet Explorer's password manager was attacked in 2005, 2004, something like that. And so put us off of password managers for a lot of years. But we found in recent years that if a user uses a password manager and uses it effectively to create secure credentials, which means a different unique password, unique strong password for every service, we say, okay, even though the password manager is a single point of failure, we'd rather risk that, because the risk tolerance, risk implication is that it's more likely that if you use the same username and password across the entire internet, your exposure is much higher than if your password manager vendor and your account gets hacked and harvested. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So single sign-on services, they come with the benefit of getting users into the services and sites that they need faster, but it comes with the disadvantage of single point of failure. If your authentication service gets hacked, then you're potentially exposed. I'm not all in on single sign-on personally because of this exposure.
Yeah.
But we do have some clients who use it. They say they want it, they understand the risk exposure, and then we implement it and support it for them. So that's that. What do you think?
No, I think that's, yeah, I mean, password management, I mean, we've talked about this before. There's still people who prefer to write it down on a little notepad next to their desk. There's people that use LastPass and similar platforms. I know Microsoft Edge, their password has changed. Their password system has changed a little bit, and they now generate the passwords, which I think is fairly new, which kind of been a nice feature of LastPass and other systems like that will automatically generate a certain length.
Yep. And Apple just released, Apple's password manager is called Keychain, and they just released a browser plugin that you can download on a Windows PC. So if you have all Mac devices and you sit at a Windows PC ever, you can bring your passwords with you to your Windows. So
yes. Yeah, and I know we've talked about this before too, but even security questions, you can make up a password for those too. If they're asking you what your high school mascot is, it's not that hard to figure out. That's not a security question. Don't just
so
put in.
We train, and our security training says use intentionally incorrect answers to security questions.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, don't put your mother's real maiden name. But then the thing is, you have to remember what that was, right? So the password, we recommend LastPass, for example, and each credential that you store in the password manager lets you keep notes.
Yes.
So you would want to keep those notes in there.
Yeah.
We do say that the more usable a computer or technology is, inherently the less secure it is.
Of course.
So, single sign-on comes with, the simplicity of fewer sign-ons, but the single point of failure is the trade-off there.
Right. And of course, use two-factor where you can, especially on those financial accounts.
Yeah, two-factor everything.
Yeah. It was a couple weeks ago, but we missed the passing of the creator of the GIF. So I know you had shared that in Flipboard, so we got to at least give him a shout out. And we're kind of an interesting story. If you go back to, I remember using GIFs on CompuServe, and that's who he worked for. I remember that being a thing like early on, and then they sort of disappeared, and now they've obviously come back a little bit. Although I guess maybe they're fading out again and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, for the listeners out there, we just clicked on probably our last headline for the day. It's the Verge article. Stephen Wilhite, creator of the GIF, has died, and Brian's reporting on that. I have that up on the screen now, a picture of him. And interestingly enough, with what looks like Internet Explorer version 5 or 6 on the background behind him. But right off the bat, I love this article. I don't love this article. God bless him and his family. And we're entering in this era where, over the last 10 years and more to come, I'm sure all of these internet pioneers, all of these technology pioneers are starting to age out, and that's sad. But I find it interesting right off the rip that you pronounce it GIF, hard G.
Yeah, like the peanut butter.
but Jif is with a J,
right?
Jiffy peanut butter is with a J, right? but
Right.
you're I always find that interesting. I think I've gone from GIF to GIF before. I think I'm at GIF right now.
Okay. Well, he came out and said it was pronounced like the peanut butter. That
Did
was his.
he? Did he say
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm an awful technologist. He invented GIF. Does this article say that? He
I
does.
know.
The Oxford right here. While there have been long-standing debates about the correct pronunciation of the image format, Will Hite was very clear on how he intended it for it to be said. In 2013, he told the New York Times, "quote The Oxford English Dictionary accepts both pronunciations. They are wrong. It is a soft G, soft G. I always thought that was a hard G. A soft G pronounced GIF, JIF. End of story. So there you go.
Yeah, like the peanut butter. But yeah, I remember those early on. They had the little, they had like the CompuServe logo was the spinning GIF, right? It was the world with something going around it, I think. I don't know.
Yep.
I'm going in the Wayback Machine, but yeah, I remember those were kind of a thing early on, and then they came back, and I guess now they're starting to disappear again, right? The kids say you're old if you're still using those, if you use those. But
So our entire staff is cultural, and we're a decentralized company, so we exist only on Teams and Teams meetings and video meetings, emails, that sort of thing. So one of the mechanisms we use to keep our culture connected is everybody's got to sign in and sign out for the day, and and it has to be, and it's in Teams, and it's in the staff team. And somewhere along the line, Teams lets you use GIFs, and somewhere along the line, our entire team, our entire company, only speaks in GIFs and the sign-ins and sign-outs, and it is funny. And I don't know where they curate all these GIFs, but they keep them
yeah, it
fresh.
is funny.
Huh?
Yeah, that's good. No, I think that's good. That's fun. It has a little personality. There is a certain, there's certain things that are said better that way, or get a little laughter, get you through the day, right? But
I mean, I understand now. Listen, I guess I get a little why there's some languages throughout human history and still that use glyph style
yeah,
um, literature writing. It seems expressive. It's pretty funny. So
yeah, it is pretty funny. But that's a good way to close it out on not necessarily a happy note, but he passed away. But we'll celebrate his contribution, and I'm sure he probably never expected it to go this long. I
he
wonder if how his state was towards the end of his life, if he got to appreciate the resurgence on his phone. I hope he did.
do you think that he was sending gifs via iMessage to
I
his
hope so.
grandchildren?
I hope
my,
so. Yeah.
my kids are starting to send them to me, and it's pretty comedic.
Yeah. Well, and then you have, incidents like the Oscar who's going to give us new ones. So we all have new current events that come around that give us more GIFs, right?
Oh, the Oscars. I thought we were gonna make it all the way through that without talking about the
Well, I
Oscars.
intentionally brought it up in the 59th minute so we can kill it. So,
Yeah, I'm not gonna touch that one. I'm not gonna touch
yeah.
that one.
So, all right. So this was our first Tuesday one, right? Or I don't know, maybe
Tuesday
our
at
second
10.
Tuesday.
Thank you so much for your patience. I'm sorry that I was moving around. Mondays it was too tough because it's dynamic start. So hopefully, does this work for you? Tuesday
No, I
morning.
think this is good. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, Wednesdays. I have a lot of meetings like Wednesday morning. A lot of like networking things are on Wednesday, and then by the time you get to Thursday, you're so Tuesday is about the latest I would want to go, unless we ended up shifting to like a Friday afternoon where it was just kind of a end of the week thing. But those don't work
I've
in.
been known to cut out early on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
So Tuesday morning I think that's right in my sweet production spot. So I appreciate that.
Yep. I think that
You want
works.
you want to bring us out?
Yeah, sure. I'm Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting, which is a registered investment advisory firm. You see our website scrolling along the bottom there if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast version, it's northshireconsulting.com. And it's finance and technologies insights. And here's Eric with his info.
I'm Eric Buhrendorf, CEO of EVERNET Consulting, America's favorite IT company. If you're managing or owning a business and you need support with your systems and software, you can schedule a call with me schedule a discovery call with me. Go to the website, evernetco.com. evernet.com or Google EVERNET Consulting, and we should be high on the list somewhere. So
All right.
that's it.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Bri,
Yep,
for
we'll see you next week.
good connection, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.